Good morning or good afternoon. My guest today is a relatively unsung hero. He's been in sport all his life, and to me, he's this shining example of all that's good about sport. And we go back a long way. And there should be a few pictures of Brassy. This is the Brassy I remember, an effervescent teenager on the Gloucestershire staff. A teammate, we were back row men in a team featuring the likes of Zahir and Sadiq. That isn't Andy Brassington. Whatever Wikipedia says, that isn't Andy Brassington. This is on the front of a benefit brochure 15 or so years after his debut, and after cricket, a career in sports admin and event management, culminating in a magic night at the Professional Cricketers Awards, the first ever recipient of their award for outstanding contribution to the sport. Andy Brassington will be talking of walkers and talkers. We'll be talking about that, I'm sure. But first of all, Brassy, welcome. We've got to apologise if we lapse into calling each other by nicknames and things like that. That's because we met as teenagers way back in the 70s, and we've got a lot of history.
We have, Alistair. I don't think I've ever called you Alistair, have I?
No, exactly.
So
Stick with Higgy. Stick with
It's
Higgy.
absolutely lovely to catch up, mate. Just tell me this before we move on.
Yeah.
Where did Bernard Mayer come from? Eh? That picture, eh?
Yeah,
Wikipedia, Bernard Mayer.
Bernie Mayer.
Yeah. The only thing with Bernard is I actually played in the game that he made his debut in up at Derbyshire. And quick story very quickly early on. Jeff Miller was stood at first slip, and Bernie fielded first and was obviously very nervous. And I found this story out years later, that after the first ball was bowled, it went straight through to Bernie, which he caught, and as a keeper he'd be so relieved. And he threw the ball to second slip and thought, I'm off to a good start. And Jeff Miller turned to him and said, "Are you going to make that noise all day?" And Bernie said, "What do you mean make that noise?" He said, "Listen, I've stood next to Bob Taylor for 30 years and I've never heard a sound of the ball going into his gloves." And Jeff was having a laugh. But apparently 10 years later, Bernie, at a function, went to Jeff and said, "I've always hated you." And Jeff said, "What for? I thought we were good mates." "That first comment you said on my debut, I've held that against you ever since, mate." And it probably wasn't the best of comments, but anyway, that's enough of Bernard Mayer. We'll move on, Dave.
Well, you share the keeping story. You joined Gloucestershire as a teenager, but before that, how did you get into sport? You're from Staffordshire, as we can tell from the accent. We'll talk about your sporting childhood and how you got into the whole thing.
Well, I'm definitely a Stokey from a little village called Hignell, which is in North Staffordshire. My mum and dad had 5 boys. I was the middle one of 5 boys, and we all loved sport. So we were forever out there playing football, in particular amongst ourselves. And it wasn't until I went to senior school that I actually started playing any cricket. It goes back to, there's someone in your life, it always changes it, doesn't it? And the guy who changed my life was a guy called Keith Morris, who was a PE teacher at Hendon School. And I went to senior school. He didn't have a wicketkeeper for his second year side, and I'd kept wicket for the first and second year side for him because he didn't have a wicketkeeper, and I was the goalkeeper. So I'd always played in goal, and so it was Keith who got me into cricket. And once I really got into cricket, it kind of took over my love for the football, although I do love the football.
Well, yeah, because you were a goalkeeper with Port Vale. You're on the books.
I was, yeah. Now I don't normally tell anybody that, Higgy, so it's out there now. So yeah, I was at the Vale for 4.5 years, and I basically had a few managers there. Gordon Lee was the first manager there, and then Royce Broston, who was a Port Vale legend, took over. Stroby played about 650 games for the Vale, and I played with people like Brian Horton, Ray Hartford, and people like that. So yeah, I love my football, but the boss came to me, which was Sprowy, one day and said, "Look, you've got to make your mind up. Are you going to play football or are you going to play cricket? You can't do the both." Because for the last 2 years, that 4.5 years I was at the Vale, I'd come down to Gloucestershire. Now, I know your listeners won't believe this, but I was actually a better cricketer than I was a footballer. So I plumped for cricket. And anyone who's seen me play must be thinking now, "Corey, you must have been a really poor goalkeeper, that boy, that's for sure."
No, but you were a professional. You were on. You had terms. You're a professional keeper.
Yes, yeah, I was. Yeah, and I loved it.
Yeah, and you still got place in your heart for the Vale?
Oh yeah, I talk. This might sound funny, but for the listeners, when you come from Stoke-on-Trent, it's quite an interesting place to be, and we call it escaping if you manage to get out of Stoke and make a career elsewhere. But I've got some really good friends who are big Vale fans, and this might sound a bit stunt, but Phil Taylor's a massive Vale fan, so I talk to Phil quite a lot, and I've been along with Phil. And Robbie Williams' dad, Pete, is a really good mate as well, and he's a massive fan. So sometimes all three of us go off and watch the Vale play, and we often talk about the Vale. So I've got lots of mates still up there, and they're actually playing down at Bristol, I think, in a couple of weeks' time, Bristol Rovers. So I'll make sure I get along and say hello to a few people.
So was the pottery split like Bristol split between the Rovers and the City, and Birmingham split, and was it split between the Vale and Stoke City?
Massively, Higgy, massively. But my dad was a massive Stoke fan, so he used to take us all off to the Stoke games all the way through. I go back to I actually watched Stanley Matthews play in the old second division for Stoke. That's how long I've been about.
He did play till he was 50, though. So.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's a good shout. But yeah, it's a massive competition. But I must be the only one who actually I do like to see Stoke do well as well. And I'm actually married to Rosalind Coates, as you know. That's her maiden name. And Rosie's uncle is Uncle Peter Coates, who actually owns Stoke City and Bet365. So
split loyalty.
Yeah, there's split loyalty, so to speak.
But you can get a place in the director's box.
Yeah, I can actually. Yeah, people in high places.
Brilliant stuff. So, during growing up, we all played all sports. You played cricket and football. I played cricket and rugby. But when did you make the choice? I mean, you played both as long as you could. Were there other sports you played, or did you just sort of stick with those two?
No, that was it really, Higgy. When I was at senior school, it was simple. It was cricket in the summer, football in the winter, and we never got thank goodness, didn't get the opportunity to play that tough game rugby union. So I don't know if I'd have fitted in as a fullback or whatever, but no, we never played those games. But obviously I adored all sports and take an interest in them all, especially when we've been lucky enough to come across so many people and friends across the country who play different sports like yourself. I can remember us all going up to Twickenham to watch you play for England, all the lads, like, So I do love following all the sports. Yeah.
What about the fact that you were a professional footballer and then you became a professional cricketer? You said there was a gamble. Well, describe how you joined Gloucestershire from Staffordshire.
Yeah, well, I was playing for Staffordshire Schoolboys against Bristol Schoolboys in 1972, and I remember the game so well. It was a rainy day in August, and the game was played in Cheadle, which again is North Staffordshire. I went to the game on a double-decker bus with a close friend called Terry Hall, who is no longer with us. And you won't believe this, honestly, but in those days I used to have long hair, and I used to be a bit gobby, like you used to. Yeah, you saw the picture, yeah. And so we were waiting for these boys from the West Country to come down with the that's that and the other. And we gave them a bit of stick, and it was a wet morning. And we bowled first, and it's amazing. The opening batsman for the Bristol Schoolboys was a lad called Nick Cooper, who I know you know very, very well. And I think there was about 4 or 5 in that team, the Bristol Schoolboys, who went on to play first-class cricket. Anyway, Nick Cooper faced the first ball. We had a lad called Kevin Long, a quick opening bowler. Again, long hair, like everybody had in those days. And he bowled the first ball, and he just drifted down the leg side. I was standing back, and I noticed that Cooper had fallen over a little bit. His head took in that way. So the next ball, I stood up and I stumped him down the leg side. Second ball for naught. And I had a good game, but I had a few chats with the batters and this, that, and the other. And the chap in charge of Bristol Schoolboys, you'll know well, was a lad called Eric Blackman. And Eric came back and said to Graham Wiltshire, the county coach at Gloucestershire, look, we've seen this young lad in Stoke. He's a keeper, and he did all right. So you ought to invite him down. So Wilt thought he'd do a little bit of investigating and asked some of the lads, Nick Finn and Ian Crawford, how we got on. And they said, yeah, he was okay. He could keep wicket okay. And then the coach, Graham Wiltshire, asked Nick Cooper, What's this keeper like in Stoke then, Coop? He goes, oh, loudmouth, never stopped talking, irritated everyone, pain up the backside. He goes, yeah, but tell me how you got out. He goes, I was stumped down the leg side second ball. And Wilt said, right, off the quick bowler, that'll do me. And they got me down. And I came down for a trial in December, down to the county ground. My dad drove me down from Stoke. There was Don Stone, chairman of cricket, Tony Brown, the captain of the club, and Graham Wiltshire, the coach. And I had 20 minutes in the net keeping wicket, and they dragged me out and had a word with my dad. And my dad said, oh, they've said you can come back in April for 2 weeks, and if you do well, you can go to Lords on the Lords ground staff, and if you don't do well, you'll be back in Stoke, mate. So I came down for 2 weeks, met up with a lad called Malcolm Dunstan, who was on trial also for 2 weeks. And in all honesty, you look back, Iggy, don't you? It probably wasn't the best 2 weeks preparation to do a trial for first-class cricket, because we spent the nights drinking and dancing and going into cricket. But after 2 weeks, Tony Brown came to me and said, "You've done well. We like what we see. We're going to offer you a 3-year contract." And I've been here ever since, and that is 50 years next April.
Yeah, so it was
frightening, isn't it?
It was 1973. And it was the year that Gloucestershire then went on to win the Gillette Cup. So a good timing. But they already had wicketkeepers. I mean, Roy Sweatman was there, wasn't he? So that you were being brought on as the sort of apprentice, one for the future.
I was. Barry Mayer, who had kept wicket for Gloucestershire for years and years and years, had retired in 1972. So they were kind of looking to fill that gap long term. But yeah, I mean, Roy Sweatman was already on the staff, and what a fantastic wicketkeeper. He played for a few clubs, Surrey in particular, and he had a lovely pair of hands. And obviously Andy Stovald, who's the same age as me, was a local boy and had come up through the ranks, and everyone knew Stov really well. And again, what a talented cricketer he was. Yeah.
And so in 73, you've left home, you've got to Bristol, you've presumably found somewhere to put a roof over your head. But, people say, professional travelling around. Also, it was pretty basic, wasn't it? We weren't paid an awful lot. I joined the year after, but we didn't get a lot of money. So we didn't have much choice of lodgings or anything like that.
Paid an awful lot at all. In fact, my age that we did. Sorry, mate, I'm just losing you for a little bit there.
Yeah, no worries.
So we 5 Logan Road, and I was paid 800 quid for that first summer, and that was £200 advance on what the lads were paid before. But I'll tell you again a little bit of luck I had, as you well know, and the listeners will know, that every April a lot of trialists come to all cricket clubs, and as senior pros and people who've been professional cricketers, they don't really take too much notice of the trialists.
Yeah.
But we had this mad guy, and I'm sure his name will crop up later on in the conversation, called Jim Folk from ex-Millfield School. And it was his second year, 1973 was, that Jim was on the staff. And on the first day of the trial of the 2-week period, Fogarty had found out that I played football at the Vale, and he's a mad Aston Villa fan.
Yeah.
And because of that, simply because of that, he took me under his wing. And on my first day as a trialist for Gloucestershire, I'm down the Robin Hood pub at lunchtime, eating ham, egg and chips with Jack Davey, David Shepherd, Jim Folk, Julian Shackleton, and the lads made me feel really welcome. And that obviously was a great help.
Sportsman's diet, of course. Yeah.
Of course, it hasn't got any better, but there you go.
None of that nutrition. So your first impressions of Gloucestershire and of county cricket, and being a professional, doing sport for a living.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're so naive when you first start. Yeah. You're just in there for the crack and enjoying yourself, surrounded. As I hear the Bass was on the staff there, Mike Proctor, and you're playing with these greats, and I don't think you'd really take in what you're doing, in all honesty. And you love the game so much, you just get out there and play it. And I wasn't overwhelmed, but I was always to start off with, I just played for the enjoyment. In all honesty, those first 2 weeks, I didn't think I'd be getting a contract anywhere, and I thought I'd make the most of it. Malcolm Dunstan, who made the most of it as well, he got a 3-year contract. So whatever we were doing, it was okay.
It well, yeah.
Yeah. But it was, when you look at that first year playing second 11 cricket and playing at test match grounds with some great cricketers, because we had senior players like Ron Nichols, about Arthur Milton, people who played the game for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they're in your side, so you've got to pull together and play pretty well. But I kind of took to it straight away in the fact that I love the environment. I love the people around me. Gloucester's such a special club, always has been. The lads were fantastic, and the supporters. And that first summer, it was heaven. I went back and played it. I went back to the Vale that first summer, and that's when I said, Luke, I can't carry on doing both. I want to stick with cricket because I feel I've got a better chance of doing that. And it was a good decision because I was a professional for 16 years. So that's quite a long time. And then they found out I couldn't really play, and I went, well, no, I'll tell you what happened. That little git, Jack Russell, came along.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to think we're going to come on to those annoying people like that. So much talent, honestly. God. Anyway, that first year, though, you were on the staff, on the second team, and it's not like it is now, in that there are lots and lots of matches, lots and lots of games, a sort of circuit for the second team. I joined the year after. I know that it was very, very haphazard, the way in which how you got your opportunities to play cricket, how you actually could improve your own game was very difficult. And at the time, of course, Gloucestershire were on their way to their first ever trophy of the 20th century.
Yeah, exactly. But that upbringing, we were a bit like the apprentices at football, weren't we?
Yeah.
We had a few jobs to do, and our favourite job for all of us, I know, was working the scoreboard. Because, and you described this really well, but the scoreboard was Graham Wiltshire, our county coach, would design everything, and he came up with this plans of having mirrors outside the score box so we could see the scores. There was great big chains we used to pull to get the numbers to go round, which had never been oiled. So as you kind of said in one of your articles, you first thought I had ginger hair when you met me, and that was just the rust from above from the scoreboard. But you know what? Without realising it, we sat there. And we always used to have a couple of beers, didn't we? They used to keep the beers down on the bottom floor of the scoreboard, and we always used to.
Don't tell anyone, Brass.
It's too late now. Poor up Tony. Tony's passed on, Tony Brown. But we would have a few beers while we were working the scoreboard, and then we'd crumple up all the cans and chuck them in the bin at the end of the day. But without realising it, we were watching the greatest players play the game right in front of our very eyes, and to watch Zahir Abbas bat, for me to watch Bob Taylor, Alan Locke keep wicket, without realising it, you're learning such a lot. And I look back on those days in the scoreboard with very fond memories. Great fun. Yeah,
and during that time, again, the first year I joined, your second year, but the first year I want to talk about the Gillette Cup, because that was a complete change for Gloucestershire then, since W.G. Grace's time, and suddenly there's this cup run, the Gillette Cup, and leading to that Lord's final. You as a sort of the understudy and the reserve, as it were, because the staff wasn't very big.
No, it wasn't.
So how did that run affect you, and how did you cope with it?
Well, I think you're always thinking you might get a chance to play at some stage, because injuries did happen, especially the keepers doing their fingers and one thing and another. But it was amazing. It gave the club a complete boost throughout that summer. And the nicest thing for me was that these lovely people who made me so welcome were going out and winning great big cricket matches, and then all the national press and TV were talking about them. And people came to the forefront. David Graveney played in that. Andy Stobbold came into the side for the quarter or semi-final. So the young lads around me were actually out there performing. Julian Shackleton, Jim Fote again. So it makes you realise that I'd got to know these guys by then well and played a lot with them, that maybe I wasn't too far away from actually getting in the limelight myself at some stage further down the line. But I remember the day so well because I got family and friends in Kent, from my mum's side. And the club very kindly let me go to Broadstairs, where we used to go every summer for a couple of days break before the final. And I came up from Broadstairs on the train into London. And again, I was only a young boy and I didn't really know London very well. So it was a massive deal. And then we joined up with the lads and we watched the game from the balcony. And you know, what an amazing occasion. And to see the lads who'd made me so welcome do so well and win that trophy, I really did feel part of it. And I think that's true with any sports players, boys and girls, that you might be on the outside, but if it's a good club, you know, you're really with the boys and girls and you feel part of it, which is great. Yeah,
and another part of the legend, which I didn't quite experience, was did you not go on a tour to Zimbabwe immediately afterwards?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Had lots of fun. Went to Africa a few times, a couple of times with the club. And I think any club tour is brilliant, but when it's an end of season club tour, it's even better because we had some tours where they're pre-season. I can remember going to Sri Lanka for 5 weeks pre-season, and that's quite serious stuff because you have to try and perform to get into the team. But as we know, end of season, it's a party, isn't it, at the end of the season? But we had a wonderful time and cemented new friends on the other side of the world. It was great,
Yeah, and I joined in 74, I think it was. And we had such fun. Of course we did, as young cricketers. We're both teenagers playing the sport that we loved. But looking back on it, it was very, very strange in terms of kit and equipment. You know, you had to buy your own kit. You remember we had to wash our own whites and things like that.
Beg, steal and borrow from the senior players. It was crazy, wasn't it? You know, when we started, there wasn't any sponsors' names on any of the shirts or the jumpers. That's for sure. But yeah, it was crazy. The guys who play now just wouldn't believe it, in all honesty. They wouldn't believe it. And it was almost at times like club cricket where batsmen were handing over bats at the gates to walk out. That's just reminded me of another thing. I see Dave Bridle a lot, who was our groundsman, and he comes to the Walkers Talkers every week, so we're always reminiscing. And I reminded him the other day and asked him why he did this. But when I used to come out to bat at number 11, he used to start up the roller. So he didn't fill me with a lot of confidence, in all honesty. But yeah, it was crazy then. But do you know? Would any of us change anything? No, not at all. The era we played in was an amazing era, wasn't it? Through the 70s and into the 80s, so many fantastic players, and I think a lot of people don't realise that we had a lot of fun and we had a few beers and we drank with the teammates and we drank with the opposing teams. But once we crossed that line in the morning to start again, it was serious stuff against some of the best players in the world, and that's another. You know, I've been lucky to play really against all the best players in the world, and from a young lad with a big mouth from Stoke, that I did okay.
Of the keepers, though, you've mentioned Bob Taylor and Alan Knott. Were they the best? I mean, I remember the time when we were comparing you with Bob Taylor. You were that good, Brassy, and you're going to be very modest about it. But were they the best keepers you saw?
Yeah, to be mentioned the same best and Bob is very kind of you, mate. Different styles of keeping, but absolutely terrific keepers. And coming from Stoke, Bob only lived a mile down the road. And as a young boy, I'd attended some coaching sessions that Bob took part in. So Bob was always my favourite keeper. But then I was lucky enough to play against Kent for the first time, and Alan Knott pulled me aside. Amazing character, Knott. He pulled me aside after the first day's play and had a little word with me, which gave me bags of confidence, and he was very supportive all the way through my career. So we're a strange bunch, us keepers. We tend to stick together and support one another. But you know, both the skills to be out. And in a way, it probably did put you under a bit of pressure because, you know, I'm keeping for Gloucestershire and Alan Knott and Bob Taylor are keeping for their counties, and you don't want to be outperformed. So, you know, you've got to be at your best to show them you're not too bad. And you were always you were always trying to impress them. In all honesty, you know, everyone you played against, but especially, you know, two keepers like Bob and Notty, I wanted to show them I wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and being a keeper in the Gloucestershire side particularly, you had such a variety of bowlers to keep against. I mean, Mike Proctor bowling coming in, I mean, it must have been really difficult to get used to the idea, to keeping to Mike Proctor, because he basically ran in and bowled before you were ready, before his left foot hit the ground. So you...
Really amazing to start off with, because he's completely different to any other bowler. And I quickly learnt when I started playing in the first team with Proc that the more he drank at night, the quicker he bowled the following day. And I was one of his drinking partners. So yeah. I cottoned on home whenever Proc had a late night, and he used to come down in the morning for breakfast. And you knew if he hadn't had a shower, his hair was sticking up. He hadn't had a shower, and he was in one of those moods, and he bowled so quickly. But he was, again, Higgy, looking back, now I think, oh my God, how did I do that? But looking back, you're young, you've got a bit of confidence, and you just love it. And everyone says keeping wicket standing back is easy. It's not, because the better the bowler, the more the ball does after it passes the bat, and it can dip and swerve and swing. And Procky always used to swing it. Used to love bowling to left-handers, and was very, very competitive. So if someone nicked it, you needed to catch it. That's for sure.
And also the slow bowlers you had to keep. I mean, the good old days, we actually, every team had a slow bowler. You try telling that to the youngsters today. No, every team had slow bowlers. We had 2 or 3 slow bowlers, but Kent had 2 slow bowlers. Everybody had a spinner and a left armer. So you had a lot of keeping to do to the spinners. Yeah,
very, very much so. It's amazing. Everybody had an off spinner, so left armer or a leg spinner. I mean, we had two quality left arm spinners, totally different. Davy Graveney, Grav was always there, found it in, quite tall. And then we had John Childs, who later went to Essex and went on to play for England. And Charlie was flight, and he had a lovely arm ball. And I can remember one summer he had a magic summer where he kept bowling people with his arm ball. And of course, we had Sadiq Mohammed bowling his leg spin. And his googly. I suppose in a way, we, correct me if I'm wrong here, we didn't really have a world-class off spinner, did we really?
No, well, Mike Proctor.
Well, corrected. Because for the guys and girls out there listening, Procky could bowl quick, but he had little fingers like little sausages. But when he came on to bowl off spin, he used to turn it a long, long way. And I think I can remember the first stumping I took off him when he was bowling his off spin, and someone had said, and in the paper it got stump Brassington bowled Proctor. So for a couple of weeks, I told everyone he was bowling flat out quick, and I just nipped down the leg side and got one, kind of thing. But Proctor, and I think Ron Nichols bowled a little bit of off spin. But yeah, certainly, you know, the talent we had and keeping wicket to Grav and John Childs was fantastic. Yeah,
but it was especially dangerous for you keeping wicket to Proctor, the off spinner, when he lost his temper.
We played.
I can remember fielding there, and what
we played Kent at Bristol as well.
And took this ball above your head. Yeah, you said, "How did Procky do that?" And he got upset with the batsman or something. Or they weren't.
2 I remember. One was Alan Knott at Bristol. The last over before lunch, he was bowling off spin, and Knotty was back in those days, like, you know, sweeping, and he got up Proc's nose. And the last 3 balls he bowled with bouncers, like at a rare pace, because it was all in his shoulders, wasn't it? So you were up there, like, you know, and we played the West Indies at Bristol, and we had him 9 down for 80 odd, and Joel came in and scored. Hung around for a couple of hours and scored some runs, and Procky let him have it. Now, you're standing up to Procky bowling off spin, all of a sudden he starts 80, 90 mile an hour bouncer at someone who's 7 foot, and you're trying to jump up there. It made for interesting viewing, I think. But that was typical Procky. He was very competitive. And I tell you what, he also used to do now and again. As you know, we had a fantastic opening bowler called Brian Brain. He joined us from Worcester. Came with a bit of a reputation, but he was the most charming man, and he was amazing with the young pros. We love Brainy. And if Procky didn't think he was bending his back with the new ball, Procky stand at slip, and he'd go to me, stand up. So just to prove a point to Brian Brain that the captain didn't think he was bending his back. And time again, I used to walk up to the wicket with Brainy looking what the hell's going on. And I'm going to Brainy, it's not me, it's him. It's the captain's fault. I don't want to do it. Don't stuff me. And then after 2 or 3 balls, Prop would go, right, come back now. I've proved my point. But, you know, there's a great excitement of standing up to quick bowlers, and I mean, no one did it better than Jack Russell, did he? And the amazing sides we had winning all those one-day competitions. But it's a great thrill to do so.
For you, though, was it very frustrating, the fact that you joined when Roy Sweatman was there and Andy Stovall was there, and then Mike Garnham came along as well, didn't he? And you know, then Jack Russell. I mean, it must have been incredibly frustrating for you.
Yeah, it was. Mike Garnham, there's a name from the past. You know, we keep a WhatsApp group for all the former players, and I had to speak to Mike Garnham on his landline because he's the only person I know this modern day and age doesn't have a mobile phone. And we used to call Mike Star, Freddie Star, because he actually thought he was a star, didn't he? Yeah. I can remember one day in the benefit match, Proc was bowling little jobbers, and a batter went to pull him, and it hit the back of his bat, and it hit me on the eye there, and I was unconscious for a little while. They brought the car on to take me off to hospital, and my eye had totally closed, and I got the blood didn't come out of it, so my eye was all baggy down here. And Mike, I went off to hospital, and they drained it all out, all the blood. But Mike actually came round my house to visit me, and I can remember lying there looking at him with one eye thinking, I know what you're thinking, you little git. We've got a match at Cheltenham coming up in 9 days' time, and you're hoping that this is not going to get better. But he did get better, and I played. But Mike was a talented cricketer and went on to play at Leicester for a long time. And again, going back to Stav. But the competition's great. And in a way, if I'd have scored more runs, I probably would have played a lot more games. So, you know, someone says all the time, you know, oh, Brassy batting couldn't hit a cow's backside with a banjo, you know. So only myself to blame, although, you know, I got some good notes, as you well know.
Absolutely.
But when Jack came along, and this is why I have a special relationship with Jack, it was clear to see, I think he was a 16-year-old schoolboy when he played his first game at Bristol, and going back to the kit, he borrowed my pads, he borrowed loads of my kit, and there's this little 16-year-old star, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute, this boy can play a little bit. So I kept him out the side for a couple of years, but it was clear to see, you know, with Jack scoring runs as well, what a talented lad he was. And as a professional sportsman, there's a couple of things you can do. You can look to move on if any other club will have you, but I love Gloucestershire. You can not work with him and not help, or you can say, okay, he's a talented boy. He's taken my place. I might as well work with him, look after him, and try and help him. And I'm sure Jack will say, and I know he's written it in some of his books, that, you know, over the years, and we're still very, very close, and I speak to him on a regular basis, you know, I was more than a help than a hindrance. And I took great delight in watching him keep wickets so beautifully.
That's a great tribute to you, Brassy, because you could have gone to, I'm sure there were other counties going, we've got to have Brassy as our keeper. You must have had several approaches from elsewhere.
Yeah, I did, Higgy, yeah, and which was very nice and flattering. But, you know, with Jack being such a good player, we thought, well, he's going to go on and play for England, and that'll throw up, you know, quite a few games for me. As you know, I got a young family. We were settled. I love the area. So yeah, do I regret not moving? No, not really, because you are where you are today because of what you've done. But there were opportunities. But you know, I could have gone along to a Worcester or Northampton and not played there and been a bit unhappy. So you know, to be on the staff for 16 years is a long time. Yeah.
And did it change much in those 16 years from the beginning to the end? I mean, we talked about the extraordinary things we had to do as junior cricketers. I think had it changed a bit? I mean, you know, do they still do the scoreboard?
No, mate. No. If you mention just, don't get me wrong, because these young cricketers at Gloucestershire are lovely, lovely lads, and people like James Bracey, what an asset, what a fine young man he is, and so are the rest of the young boys. But no, I think if you said, James, can you go and do a stint at the scoreboard, there might be a few words said. They're very well looked after. And as you know, back in the day, but it was great fun. You know, now they've got all the people that they tell them what to eat, what to drink, where to train. They've got staff all over, bowling coaches, wicket-keeping coaches, batting coaches. They've got it all. We had one coach, Graham Wiltshire, who knew far more about fishing than he did cricket, that is for sure. And then we had one physiotherapist called Les Barsley, who covered everything. And his main tool, and this is so true, his main tool was a bucket of cold water and a sponge.
Yeah.
And that was it. But he did have one thing up his sleeve, and I've seen this many, many times, with our two Pakistani players, Zahir Abbas and Sadiq Mohammed. Tony Brown was the captain, and they'd try and pull the wool. Cold, early season, cold at Bristol. They weren't too keen on playing. And so they go, can't play captain today, got a bad leg, this, that, and the other. And captain would go and talk to Les Bars and say, Les, Zed's trying to pull the wool again. I've sent him into the treatment room. That was just a little cupboard with like a chair in it. That was it, treatment room. And so Zed would be sat in there, and Les would come in and said, "You're struggling then, are you, Zed? You got a bad injury?" He goes, "Oh, Les, can't play today. Really injured." And he used to have this great big needle like that. Les Barsley did. And Zed stayed there and he used to come back with this great big needle. He said, "You just need a little injection." And with that, Zed would be off the bench, get his whites on, straight out onto the field. Worked every time it did. But happy days. You know, but things do change in all sport. And, you know, Gloucestershire have got a great backroom staff. And when you look back on the runs, we talked about the first trophy in 1973, but, you know, under Mark Alain's captaincy and to win all those one-day competitions, we were streets ahead of everybody. And that was down to John Bracewell, the coach who came in. And John was quite an interesting character, not everyone's cup of tea, but he certainly put together a magnificent side that plays some super cricket, way ahead of everybody in that era.
Would you like to be a young cricketer 20, 30 years later than you were? Or
the money would have come in handy, mate. But, you know, it wasn't about money for us, was it, in all honesty? It was about the pride of putting on that Gloucestershire sweater and cap. I mean, the cricketers today, you look at the England in the test match, what a test match. And Zahir Abbas phoned me this morning to talk about the test match and how much he enjoyed it, and a fair play to England playing so well. But the game has changed, obviously, you know, with T20 coming in and now the 100 and the 10 competitions. Who can blame any young cricketer coming through now just wanting to play white ball cricket? You know, it's but you can, as we've seen, and I'm a great believer, any great player from any era would play all white ball cricket. Can you imagine Mike Proctor playing T20? Right? Absolutely frightening that'd be. He'd be stunning. And great batters like Zahir Abbas, so graceful, but he would be able to adapt to the shorter game. Yeah, lovely. So, you know, for the lads now playing, you know, good luck to them. I very much keep in touch with the guys at Gloucestershire. I've got a dinner, one of our sporting dinners, Sue Finders Keepers, with Sam Allardyce on Thursday, and I've invited a table for the former players and a table for the current players at Gloucestershire, because it's nice to get them out and about and all mixing in together, because, you know, we might have played 50 years ago, but the game hasn't changed that much that we can't talk to a James Bracey or whoever about the game. You know, it's still about the ball on 22 yards kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were starting, the Sunday League had just got going, and there were still a number of our colleagues who said, "Well, Sunday League, that's I don't play cricket on Sundays."
Jack Davey playing our left arm bowler who came up from Devon, who's a super guy. You know, Jack Davey playing cricket on a Sunday, not at all. He told me, because back in the day at Cheltenham, they used to throw a lot of sand on the wicket there, and Jack always said he had 2 weeks holiday during Cheltenham weeks. Like, he never played at all, just get the spinners, you know, when you've got the great spinners the club have had over the years. But yeah, that was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? And the limited run-ups as well. But they were that 40 over competition was great. We played in front of big crowds, and you know, a lot of TV games being covered. So yeah, it was a great front run of the 40 over cricket. Good competition.
But now they've gone to 20 overs and 100 balls. Are we going to carry on track to? Do you think we've reached the optimum point.
I think we have. I've been watching a little bit of that T10 in Pakistan, and it's like watching a game, highlights of a match, in all honesty. I think that's taken a bit far. The 100, obviously, it's out there for everyone to debate. I've seen a couple of 100 games. I'm a big T20 fan, in all honesty, and I think a little bit more money put into T20, tweak it a little bit was fine. And it's clear to see the Indians who are buying up all the franchises are buying up all the T20 franchises, and we'll see where the 100 goes. I know there's been a little bid from someone to buy it, but apparently that's peanuts at the minute, so that's going nowhere for the time being.
But the interesting thing from Gloucestershire's point of view, and now Sussex, where I live, the 100 is condensing it even more, and the counties on the outside are feeling, I don't know if Gloucestershire feel that way, but I know Sussex are feeling sort of left out because they can't stage or play 100 cricket.
Yeah, Gloucestershire, this neck of the woods, that south-west leg, it takes into Somerset, Devon and Cornwall. They've got our nearest franchises, Cardiff, and that's called Welsh Fire. Which, believe it or not, doesn't have one Welsh player playing for them. So, it's very hard for our supporters to identify. We've got a few of the boys who are playing in different franchises around the country for the 100, but it's very difficult. We sadly do feel we're missing out an awful lot. And, the amount of cricket that's being played in August when the 100's going on is minimal. And, for our members, I think they're not getting their value for money. If we'd had a franchise in Bristol and we played the games, it'd be interesting to see how we go. But we know Welsh Fire have done very poorly in the competition and have had poor crowds. And we look in Bristol and think, well, Bristol's a massive city. We could pull in from Somerset and Devon and Cornwall, and we would have made it a success here.
But I'm also thinking of the effect on the so-called smaller counties, because you don't play proper cricket for the best part of the summer, which used to be the main source of revenue and interest and support. And so the counties like Gloucestershire and Sussex are being marginalised in a way.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And you have the Royal London competition, the 50 over competition, which has basically been downgraded, hence the sponsors moving on after a long time, which basically was a second 11 competition. They took it away from Lords, put it at Trent Bridge, which is a lovely place, but to move out of Lords, and it just lost all its attraction. The sad thing was, it did enable you to see some young cricketers coming through, but people didn't want to pay at the gate and come and watch that kind of thing, So, it's difficult, and we all know in any sport you need to play on a pretty regular basis to keep in good nick.
Yeah, but there's also about clubs like Gloucestershire and Sussex, there's an enormous history and tradition and sense of community, which, you are doing fantastically as far as the Gloucestershire players are concerned, by keeping the torch burning, if you like, by keeping us all in touch with future generations. But there's a huge weight of tradition and history there.
Oh, that's a lovely thing about our cricket. And I'm forever reminding the lads, and I say this a lot, because not everybody leaves the club under nice ways. You're normally sacked, or you've got a bad injury and this, that, and the other. As you know, we put the former players' day together, and sometimes it's hard for players who've been at a club and been released to get them back involved. But I say to them, look, the club is the club. You might have not gone on with the captain, or the coach wasn't your favourite person, but we're here representing, you've represented Gloucestershire County Cricket Club, the history of that club, 152 years old it is now. And this came up in conversation yesterday. So I've got 50 years next year involved with the club, and that's a third of the club's history. Am I proud? Quite right, I'm proud. I love the fact that I'm able to say that. And all those players who have come and gone before us, and all the players for the future, it's an amazing place to be. And we had a coach called Richard Dawson, who I'm sure the listeners will remember. Dawes played at Yorkshire, Gloucestershire, and then became our coach. He's now on the England pathway coaching-wise. And he installed into his squad, and he set a fantastic footing for the club to be on with the young players, that you're representing Gloucester County Cricket Club here, and we're in it together. We're all as one, and it doesn't matter what goes on the outside. If you're not happy with this, that, and the other, we are a team. We're the Gloucester boys. We're the glorious Gloucesters, and that's the theme, as you know, Higgy, goes through all the club, from all the old players to all the new players. And you know what, the lads now, after a good victory, will sing the Glorious Gloucester song, and we're so proud to be part of it.
Yeah, but it is unique in a way. I mean, what you've done for Gloucestershire is unique in that I don't think there are any other counties, and I'm in touch with several of my mates who used to play for us. There aren't anybody who's done it. What motivated you to be the convener, as it were, of the former players and the man who keeps us all together?
Friendship, memories, being in a position where I feel lucky. I've run my own business for the last 25 years. I've got time to do it. Probably a bit selfish point of view, in all honesty, because it's nice to be able to help people and keep people together, and all the memories and the chats we have, and I just love it. And it's so important also, and I said earlier on, it's so important that the former players get to know the older players, you know, and there's some legends there, and they can learn a lot. We set up an initiative with the Owen Dawkins at the club a few years ago, where we matched a senior player from years gone by, so it'd be a Phil Bainbridge, with a young batter who's just coming to the squad, and it was no big deal. They'd have a coffee once a month and talk about anything, but it was a partnership, and shows that we're all part of the club. And I know the young lads who play now really enjoy meeting the former players, and they'll be, you know, we'll get together on Thursday and they'll all be drinking in the bar together, telling their own stories, and it's lovely to see. And I just love to be able to, you know, to try and help in some way. And it's clear to see also that not everyone, when their career finishes, you know, kicks on to do great things in life. Sometimes it's a bit of a struggle financially, mentally, and you know, if you can be there and be there for people. And that's the one thing I've learned how to walk and talk is, mate. I like a chat, but sometimes it's better just to listen, and just to be there for people to chat away, and all that side of it, I love. Yeah,
you were talking about where people go after their career is finished. Your career ended after 15 years as a professional. Did you have an idea of where you were going, and when did you start to think, oh, I must plan for life after cricket, or what can I do? How did that happen?
Higgy, it's amazing, isn't it? Because I'd like to say, I got everything planned, but no, I didn't. I didn't. Do you know what? I went through my career, and I never worried about getting the sack for some reason. Not because I was great. I just thought if that was the way it was going to be. And I saw so many of my friends, you know, Jim Fote again, Julian Shackland, young local boys, Steve Rindybank, Nick Finn, and Ian Crawford, local lads who got loads of talent, came in for 1 year, 2 years, and then disappeared. And it really does shake your life up when that happens. I'd just coming to the end of my 16th season. I had 1 more year on my contract. I'd lost my place to Jack Russell. And Philip August, who was, he called the chief exec now, but Pip was the club secretary in those days. And he came out to me one morning on a match day and said, Brassy, I've just had the marketing manager in here. He's packing it in. He's going to work for the Welsh FA. Why don't you do it? You're not going to play again. He said, you won't play anywhere. You won't play again. So why don't you do it? So I literally took my whites off one day and put a suit on the next day. And I was the marketing manager for the next 8 years there. And it taught me so much. I'd always been, as you know, I'd always been the one at the end of the day's play to go in the sponsors market and have a beer and a chit chat. I had a benefit in 1988. So I was quite used to talking to people, and I thought, why not? This is a great opportunity for me. And that was the footings for me really to move on and to be so lucky running finders keepers for the last 25 years. But I adored that side of the job, of being involved with the club, working with the sponsors. And it's funny because when I was a player, I loved the dressing room, and it's a sacred place. And I didn't like people coming in the dressing room when I was playing, because they'd normally come in when you'd won a big game and they'd bring a bottle of champagne and all that. When you got your backside kicked, they were nowhere to be seen. So I always loved the dressing room because you laugh, cry, be together in there, and it's a sacred place. So when I became the marketing manager, I kept out in the dressing room, and I have done ever since, because I just feel that I had my time in it, and it's these people's time now. But you know, we're all different. When the lads went and won all these games, they were constantly on to me to come and have a beer with them in the dressing room, and I never did. And I would look, and I would see people who should have been nowhere near the place trying to jump on the bandwagon. So I'm still very sensitive to this day, I'd never, ever, ever go in the Gloucester dressing room. No.
But the amazing quality you have is your ability to remember names and faces and people, which, you know, is fantastic in your job as marketing manager and now as in Finders Keepers. Where does that come from, Brassy? Because you've just got the most amazing memory for people and faces and past conversations.
That's really, it didn't get any easier, that, mate, but that's very kind of, I think honestly, it just comes from the love of people, the love of life, to have a crack, to enjoy yourselves, and for other people to enjoy other people enjoying themselves, you know. And I've got 2 girls who are obviously grown up now. I've got 4 grandkids, all boys, and to pass on, you know, to try and get them to be not out there where they're over the top, but to communicate with people, be nice to people. It's the easiest thing in the world to say please and thank you. And people often say to me, "Oh, you've done well with your business. It's been a great business, and you're still going strong after 25 years." It's not rocket science. If you're a nice person in life and you take that into your business and behave the same way, and you do things right, there's no magic wand. It's one of my sayings. We've got many sayings, but there's no magic wand to way. So yeah, we have these big lunches, and you know, we've had 700 people at some of our lunches, and people come in and say, "Oh, you've got the best job in the world," you know. And I said, well, I haven't waved a magic wand to get these people here, you know. I've been on the phone, I've been to see people, but it's all part of, you know, I've been so lucky, so lucky in life to meet so many lovely people. And, you know, this Walkers and Talkers is a complete new venture for me that's really given me a fantastic boost and made me realise even more that if you've got an opportunity where you can help people, then get out and do it.
Yeah, I wanted now to go on to Walkers and Talkers, because that was the initiative for which you received the PCA's first ever award for an outstanding contribution. So a marvellous thing, but a fantastic idea. Explain how it began.
Oh, right. First of all, that award in London, it blew me away. I didn't know anything about it at all, and I accept. Yeah, I did look a bit shocked, didn't I? You should have heard what I said when I found out. But it was amazing. But how it started was during lockdown, again, because I like to keep in touch with all the former players. I made it my job. We didn't have a lot to do, did we? I thought, well, I'll keep in touch with the lads on a regular basis. And we got over 100 former players. So I was making phone calls and chatting away, just like we are doing now. And I found out that there's some of the lads weren't coping with it as well as others. And we all found it very, very hard. And we all have our ups and downs and anxieties. And one of the lads in particular, so I phoned a couple of people who knew him well, and he said, "No, Brass, he's struggling. He's definitely struggling." So I went to see him in his workplace, which probably wasn't the best place to see him. And we had an hour together, put him in touch with the PCA, with the Benevolent Fund, and they have been fantastic. He still gets counselling once a week now, which has been a great help to him, and we're 3 years on. So I said to him, "Luke, let me see you next week, but let's not meet in your workplace. Let's go on the Downs, which is a big green area in Bristol, and have a cup of coffee." And it was at that time where you could get a coffee, but you couldn't sit down. You had no other option but go for a walk. So we went for a walk and had a chat, and it was really nice. It did me a lot of good. It did him a lot of good. And I then started talking to the other lads, saying, "Look, I'm at the Downs on Wednesday, like, you know, why don't you come and join us?" And bit by bit, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the lads would come, and we'd have a coffee and a little walk around. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? If things got better, we could do it and open it up to everybody. And I had this vision of people watching Gloucestershire play, saying, "Watching David Lawrence play" back in the day. And then all of a sudden they turn up and they're walking down the county ground, and there's David Lawrence. And you can go, "Hi, Sid. I remember you getting a hat-trick at Cheltenham. Well, I remember this." And that's how it started. But again, it's not rocket. It's so simple. That what makes it so good, it's so simple. We turn up at 10 o'clock at the county ground. We have a cup of coffee, chocolate biscuits now, and then we go for a little walk. We drop off, if they want to, into the museum, where Roger normally pulls out an old bat or an old ball or a cap and tells a story about it for 10 minutes. Then we walk back to the pavilion, top up a tea and coffee, and we sit down in a room and we have a very laid-back Q&A with a local celebrity. And I can't thank the guys and girls who come along free of charge and we've got Kevin Maggs, as I said earlier on. But we've tried to cover all sports as well. We've had I've got a little list in front of it. Harry Cobden from the racing world, Paul Nicholls is #1 jockey, Ian Holloway, the football world, Joe Sims, and Bristol actor, Kate Anger Gray, who lost her arm when she was 2 years old, and went on to be a gold medalist at the Olympics, Paralympic Olympics. David Graveney's done it. We've had Dino Zapparoni, a Formula 2 racing driver, Greg Street, a basketball player. So we've covered all angles. So we have one thing in common. It's someone said to me after a few weeks that we'd created a platform for people to be comfortable and they could talk. And we have tears. We've had at least six of the people who've come to speak have broken down in tears because we talk about their lives and their parents and their role models. The first one ever, very briefly, was Sid Lawrence. David Lawrence did the first one for me, the club president, doing so much great work, a fantastic guy. There was 25 people there, the first one. I'm doing the Q&A, but we encourage questions from the floor. And this lady asked Sid about his parents, and both his parents had died a couple of years ago, close together, and Sid's a big family man. And Sid just broke down. So I've got this great big fan, hulk of a man in front of 25 people. I've put my arm around him. I said, "Are you okay, Sid?" And he goes, "Just give me a minute." And I looked up and I looked at all these people looking at Sid. And I thought, this is great. Because if they can see Sid showing his emotions, then everybody can do it. And what we didn't know that day, Sid set a precedent. And we Jeff Merrick is an ex-Bristol City footballer. He captained them and took them in the 70s into what would be the Premier League now. It was one of the Ashton Gate 8 who got sacked. He'd never told these stories. He talked about things he'd been kept bottled up for 40 years. There was tears in the audience. Chris Saniger, adopted, didn't know who his parents were. Chris broke down on a number of occasions, but it's okay. It's okay. And that's what I found after a few weeks. I thought, wouldn't it be nice to do this? And then I realized, because some people were pulling me, one person who I'd known for 50 years in April pulled me and said that he'd been struggling and this was changing his life. And I keep in touch with maybe 10 people during the week just to give them a phone call, see how they're doing before they come back on a Wednesday morning. But we shied away. We didn't want to come in too heavy with mental health in this. We said, look, if you're a bit anxious, if you're a bit lonely, come out and join us. And we had 130 there last week. It's crazy. And we're just in the process of also taking it down to Somerset County Cricket Club, doing a pilot there starting in March, once a month down there to get to start with. And hopefully we can get it out to a lot more places, because we know it's doing an awful lot of good for a lot of people.
Absolutely the right recipe for people. I mean, everybody knows the connection between physical health and mental health. And to combine the two, and for those for whom sport has been a big part of their lives, it's the perfect mix. It's absolutely brilliant, and I think what you've done is an amazing thing. And you get 130 odd people there to Bristol now.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's almost like someone sprinkled gold dust on it, honestly. And people are meeting friends they play sport with from 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're making new friends. It's a real close group. We make anyone who comes in very, very welcome. We've got a book club now, and some of your books are in there, Higgy, as well, where people can take away a book and read it and bring it back. And once a month, we've started a lunch club where people stay on and have lunch. We've kind of just stumbled along, and there's so many lovely people out there. So many people want to help and volunteer. And I walk home from the county ground because, as you know, I only live down the road, and I feel a sense of pride, and I feel very satisfied that we're doing a good thing. But it's not me; it's the group. It's all the individuals who come along that make it so special. But I'm really, really pleased with it. And now I get invited to places to talk, and it's not because I used to play a bit of cricket. It's because, oh no, don't talk cricket. Tell us about walkers and talkers, which I love to do anyway.
Well, it's all part of the same thing, though, and it's the great, what I like to call I remember some posh bloke in the RFU called the glorious global Freemasonry of sport. But it's that thing that links us all together, that we've experienced sport, played sport, watched sport, followed sport, and so you've got something in common with someone, and you can talk, and
Well,
that leads anywhere.
Higgy, you're spot on. You've got something in common. I feel like we're pulling Bristol together because we have Rovers fans, we have Rovers players, we have City fans, City players, cricket, Gloucester, our former players are in great support in it. We get some of the lads from Somerset come down. It doesn't matter. There's lots of banter going on, but everyone's pulling together. And as I say, there's a theme goes through from our speakers. James Bracey spoke for us. He absolutely outstanding. John Lewis, absolutely outstanding. But the one theme is that you get knocked down, you get back up. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get nothing in life unless you work hard for it and you do things the right way. Ian Holloway, what an outstanding man he is. Brilliant. So everybody leaves the Wednesday lunchtime. Everyone's right up there. Can't wait to get back. Who've we got next week? I'll see you next week. And it is amazing. But it's how it's all happened. I think it's because it's so simple. The most simplest thing in life, isn't it? To be nice to someone and have a chat. And the chocolate biscuits. Joe Sims, the actor. I didn't know Joe, and I dealing with him, asking him if he'd come and do it, because he does a lot of work locally for the charities. Joe was great, and our first conversation, he said, "Andy, I know a bit about it. I'd love to do it. Just one thing, but in the contract though." And I thought, hold on, contract? Does he not know it's all for free? He goes, "Unless you got chocolate biscuits, I'm not coming." And so we now have chocolate biscuits, and the attendance has gone up. So I don't know if it's the biscuits or the people we're getting there. But for me, the guest speakers are brilliant, but the first hour is the most important for me. People meeting, greeting one another and walking around. How's your week been? How's your missus today? And how the kids, and that's what it's about. And I love to sit back in the room and see all these people just chatting away, helping themselves to coffee. It's all complimentary. Everything's complimentary. I didn't want anyone to put their hands in the pockets. It's not about that. And that's where all these great guests who come along are so good, doing it for nothing, giving up the time. But you want to see when we kick him out. And I'm missing Andy Stovall, who's in Pakistan at the moment, because he's our number one walker. He does more laps than anybody else.
Well, so he did.
He normally starts us off, but we kick him out about 10 past 10 and say, "Come on then, this is walkers and talkers. Let's go and do a little wander." And you're there leading the group normally with whoever the guest speaker is. And I look back the other day, we've got 130 people walking behind us. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing. And the local press and everyone's been so good. So we've got it out there, and people come along every week. We'll have new people there again tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to meeting.
Absolutely brilliant, Brassy. And you've not really mentioned the key ingredient, which is your personality, your organisation, your enthusiasm has been a wonderful thing, and thankfully recognised by the PCA. And unfortunately, I can phone you up and we can chat whenever we want. But unfortunately, as far as our listeners are concerned, we've come to the end of this chat.
You're joking.
It's gone past 1 o'clock already. So it's been so good talking to you, Brass, and thanks for sharing all of this with the listeners on Sporting Memories and on Goldster. It's been brilliant catching up. We must do it on the phone as well. And the very best of luck with Walkers and Talkers. I hope it'll be a nationwide institution before long.
Higgy, thanks so much for allowing me to come and join you guys. Happy Christmas to everybody. It's been lovely to catch up.
Take care, Brassy. Speak
Cheers,
soon.
Higgy. Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.